Cead Fáilte. Welcome back to another episode of Crann, beatha, Short Stories and Poetry. I'm Terrance Ó Domhnaill, your village scéalaí, returning again this week with more stories and poems from authors around the world. This week I have 3 stories and a lovely poem from my friend in Bulgaria. I'm starting a new space opera series today, along with the ongoing story, The Gravediggers of Orpheus. My last story is a short story about loneliness, and the poem is about sadness. So gather around once more and let me read to you under the shade of the Crann, beatha, the Tree of Life. As I said, my first story is the start of a new one. It's entitled The Altair Prime Revolt, a UEC story by Michael Marpon. He published the first one here back in March. But again, I'm starting this new one here. I picked it out because it's pretty good. It has been 6 months since the Altair Prime Revolt erupted, and the United Earth Coalition, UEC, was slowly, though surely, taking back the mining world, Altair Prime, from the rebelling workers. The UEC 9th and 13th Independent Military Groups, also known as the Podolsky and Cisalpine Legions respectively, had been tasked by the UEC High Command to crush this workers' rebellion after the undermanned Altair Prime Defense Force was surprisingly defeated. The 2 legions were expected to handle this job with ease, but instead they found themselves bogged down on the planet as the rebels turned out to be more heavily armed and entrenched than their intel reported. Even so, that wasn't the reason for the UEC struggles, nor were the legionary commanders to blame, for Colonel Scott Harrington Britannicus of the Podolsky Legion and Commander John F. Jack Green of the Cisalpine Legion were 2 of the finest military leaders in their space. It wasn't an issue with the soldiers either, as the men of the 9th and 13th were known for their bravery and competence. The issue was twofold. First was the High Command, with their initial rules of engagement forbidding the use of certain things like tanks and air support. But the real problem was the commander of Altair Prime Counterinsurgency Task Force, Major General Tyrone Murray. To say that Major General Murray was incompetent would be a severe understatement, and his decision-making was indeed responsible for the initial difficulties the Podolsky and Cisalpine legions faced in the invasion. More importantly, Murray's callousness regarding civilian lives had leaked onto the people of Altair Prime. At the outskirts of Lexington, soldiers of the 13th were scouring the farmlands. They were looking for something to eat, or to be more specific, they were looking for something natural to eat, something that would have been nowhere near as disgusting as the UEC meal rations. Corporal Marco Icardi shook his head in frustration, his brow sweating. He looked ready to scream towards the sky. "What's wrong, Corporal?" Jack asked. Having been busy with communicating with the 9th, the commander of the 13th didn't partake in the foraging. "I can't seem to find any food here," responded Marco. "In fact, I don't think I've ever found foodstuffs on this planet. All I've got are cash crops like tobacco, cotton. I even found some cannabis." The commander grinned. "I thought you were a city boy, Icardi." "I was, but my grandpappy was a corn farmer. He used to let me pick some of the crops for me to eat. Anyways, there's nothing to eat here. Where are the wheat or corn or rice?" "There are none," a third person answered. He was none other than Major General Murray himself. "They only plant cash crops here in Altair Prime. When the people aren't making money by mining, they do it by farming." "Major General, sir," Jack said in surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I go where I please, Commander." "But, sir," Carty interjected, "how do the people of this planet get their food?" "How else, Corporal?" responded Murray. "Trade. They import all their food." Commander Green's eyes narrowed. "That's just asking for trouble, if you ask me." "Indeed," Murray said, smiling. "If it were up to me, I would have skipped the whole ground invasion and simply blockade the whole damn planet. Starve the rebels into submission. Unfortunately, the pansies at Pyramid don't have the gumption for that kind of thing." Jack grimaced. "You'd be starving 20 million people to death, sir." "A small price to pay, if you ask me," Murray said. Commander Green didn't respond. Neither did Corporal Icardi. Chilled to their bones, both men could only look to one another. Unfortunately, the people of Altair Prime had caught wind of this conversation. As it turned out, a child of 12 had been eavesdropping. This leak of information lengthened the campaign by a few more months as civilians became less willing to cooperate with the UEC. Despite the setbacks they suffered, the 9th and the 13th were able to fight their way to Carlsberg, the location of the largest rare earth mineral mine on the planet. The mine was a huge pit, with Carlsberg City built entirely around it. Seeing the wealth before his eyes, Commander Jack Green was disgusted. He turned to his friend, Colonel Scott Harrington. "Look at that. How many credits worth are in that mine alone? Millions? Billions?" Harrington groaned. "Not this again." Jack ignored his friend. "Yet these poor miners are struggling to make a living while their employers make a killing." "Brother, why do you sympathize for those accursed rebels?" asked the colonel. "Why do you not?" the commander countered. "These people are simply fighting for their shot at an honorable living, and we're killing them for it." "Need I remind you that those honorable rebels have terrorized this entire planet and killed not just our fellow soldiers, but innocent civilians as well?" responded Harrington. "How many orphans and widows were made because the rebels decided that violence was the answer to their grievance? They were pushed into a corner, damn it." "Maybe, but that doesn't matter. Not anymore." Green's eyes widened. "Scotty, how can you even say that?" Harrington took a deep breath. "I understand the plight of these proletarians. Really, I do. However, they have chosen a course of action that only worsens the situation. Now we either allow their reign of terror to continue, or we stop them by force. There has to be another way. Jack, you know I admire your determination to avoid a no-win situation, but sometimes you can only choose the least abhorrent option." Before Commander Green could respond, the recently promoted Sergeant Icardi arrived. He saluted the two legionary commanders. "Pardon me, sirs. General Murray wishes to speak with you both." "Speaking of abhorrent," Jack said. Harrington groaned and shook his head. "Let's just go, brother." So that's the first chapter, and I'll be bringing you more of these in the coming weeks. So my second story is Chapter 8 of The Gravediggers of Orpheus by Catherine E. Lane. "Perfect timing, Joe," Derek grunted under his nose, or more precisely into his transmitter, after Joe's voice rumbled in his ear, informing the gravedigger captain about the state of the excavation bots. "What's that, Cap?" Joe yelled in his ear. "Nothing," Derek cleared his throat. "Get the bots out. I'll be back on the bridge in a minute." Although he tried to stay calm, Derek heard his own voice trembling slightly. Sophie stood too close. Just a minute ago she kissed his cheek. Little Anu cooed in Derek's arms. An unknown warmth rose in his chest. The three of them felt like a family. Was that the word he was looking for? Before Joe's interruption, Sophie's lips lingered dangerously close to Derek's. He inhaled the smell of her skin. Derek had closed his eyes, waiting for whatever might happen next. What followed was Joe's report. Derek opened his eyes to the cruel reality. He had to tell her about the delay. "You're gravediggers. It's a noble mission, I understand," Sophie whispered, with her lips too close, after Derek had stuttered out his explanations. "Whatever may happen, Captain." Derek was expecting some heartfelt words. He didn't expect Sophie to go on with her initial endeavor. Their lips touched. Derek hadn't felt this rush in years. "Cap, you coming?" Joe's voice growled in his ear. Sophie's lips released him. "Coming," Derek blurted out hoarsely. She smiled at his bewilderment. "Go, Captain," Sophie urged him, smiling sweetly. She took baby Anouk from Derek's arms. "Derek," he said. "Call me Derek." "Go, Derek," she repeated softly. Hearing Sophie pronounce his name was almost as exciting as her kiss. Derek stood in the doorway, smiling like a fool. "Go," she said. Captain nodded and hurried to the bridge. It was bad. The worst ghoul attack Derek had seen in a long while. The streets of the tiny Morblard village were covered in their giant green bodies. Their black blood literally soaked the ground all around the corpses. Though Derek didn't have the time to ponder, the thoughts kept rolling through his brain all the while he worked. Why? Murblards were a peaceful minority. Everybody knew, since the bloody Murblard Wars, the Green Giants didn't want anything to do with violence. They surrendered to the ghouls on the first demand. In normal cases, the gravediggers would gather the bodies and prepare them before putting into coffins and taking to proper burial grounds. But this was an unexpected request, and the Murblards had their own graveyard near the village. Derek and the boys loaded the corpses, or rather what's left of the mangled bodies, into the white coffins. It wasn't pretty. The black blood smeared the white organic fiber. Derek was drenched in sweat, loading the giant corpses into the coffins as carefully as he could. They barely fit. All the while, he had an eerie feeling of danger lurking just around the corner. I have a bad feeling about this, Cap, Joe confirmed his suspicions. Derek gave a short nod. Luckily, none of the excavation bots died, like they usually did. Derek, his crew, and a handful of remaining Morblards stood near the freshly dug graves with the white coffins, while the bots poured the red soil of Orpheus into the graves. Ashes to ashes, Derek murmured like he always did. Ake the Merblard said some words in their guttural tongue. I'm sorry for the rush, and Derek began, but a blast-like sound interrupted him. A ghoul ship rose from the nearby cliffs. Apparently they had crept up on the village, flying low. Dispatch, inform the ghouls we're a gravedigger crew on a mission. Come in, Dispatch, Derek yelled, but no answer followed. The dispatcher's tower was stubbornly ignoring Derek's attempts to communicate these last days. They ain't coming to talk, Cap, Joe said. Back to the Vulture! Run! Derek bellowed, before his voice was silenced by gunshots. The ghouls didn't waste any time, shooting while their ship approached. The gravedigger crew were no soldiers. They ran, hiding behind large rocks and cliffs. Jimmy, get the engines running. We got to get out of here, Derek addressed one of the guys left on the ship through the transmitter. Got it, Cap. Jimmy fired up the Vulture's engines momentarily. The bullets blasted all around them. Derek saw the Merblard Ake running alongside him, shielding Derek with his giant green rump. They weren't far from the Vulture 05. Jimmy opened the Vulture's door just in time for the crew to jump in, followed by a shower of bullets. Derek was the last one, making sure his crew gets in safe. The bullets reached him, but the Morblar jumped in front and took them, collapsing at Derek's feet. Without giving it a second thought, Derek dragged the giant into the ship. Joe returned to help him. The ship door closed with a swoosh, followed by the sound of bullets hitting him. Go, Jimmy, go, Derek yelled. So, I'm going to take my break right now. Give me a couple of minutes, listen to my little advert like always, and I'll be back to read the third story and my little poem as soon as I get back. During this break, I wish to ask for a donation of any amount to help me keep this podcast going. I'm fine with whatever you can afford, using whatever currency you want. I have set up a donation tab on the Crann Stories and Poetry webpage at rss.com and a donation page on my website at www.crannabihah.com using PayPal for your security. Don't worry about the exchange rates, as PayPal takes care of that for us. If you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know in your social circles, as the writers I showcase in this podcast deserve all the exposure they can get. I created this podcast for them because I love to read their work, and I believe it should be shared with the whole world. Now, I want to explain how to find my website. Since this show is audio only, just write down the website name from the podcast image showing here and search for it. Visitors finding the website for the first time will reach the welcome page to learn a little bit about what's inside. You'll see the homepage link at the bottom of the page. Click on it if you wish to enter my world. Once on the homepage, you'll see the menu bar at the top where there are links to the pages in the website. Feel free to look around all you want. If you should happen to buy one of my books, all the better. Thank you for your support. Welcome back. So my third story is entitled You Have to Love Yourself Too, a short story inspired by one of my favorite quotes from Once Upon a Time by Sarah Fellers. She published this in the Fiction Writer's Den. Lorena looked like a madwoman. Her dirty blonde curls frizzed out at odd angles, exhaustion ringed her pale green eyes, and her complexion had long lost all its color. She hadn't seen the sun in days, let alone eaten or slept. Still, she stirred the cauldron. It bubbled and popped with every ragged turn. Lorena glanced at the stairwell and the foyer with longing. Her bedroom and that wonderful, comfortable, queen-sized bed were just up those steps. She could almost feel the soft cotton covers between her fingers. Yet, Lorena knew she couldn't stop. This was the sacrifice needed for the most powerful magic of all. Of course, preparation was going to be intensive. Besides, she was almost done. Someone would love her. They had to. It was the fastest way to plug the hole where her heart had been. She started stirring faster and faster, grief possessing the spoon more than her hand. The spoon suddenly slipped and hit the chain holding up the cauldron. It was an old chain, long eroded by magical mishaps and quick temperature changes, and now it snapped. Lorena's hopes sank as her love potion spilled into the fire below. I'm so stupid. No wonder no one wants to be around me, she told herself. Lorena moved the cauldron and fire to put it out, accidentally inhaling some of the smoke. She reeled, coughing hard for a few moments. Even though I inhaled some smoke, the scent was lovely. I'm lucky I thought to put in those extra rose petals, she mused as she caught her breath. Wait, I'm lucky? She paused as the unusual words seeped into her mind. Don't tell me I inhaled my own love potion, she cried aloud, but then she burst out laughing as a lightness replaced her alarm. Lorena danced to her front door. The reclusive witch who had shut herself up in her manor for the past 6 years kicked her door open, stepped out, and collapsed onto her porch, fast asleep. Lorena awoke slowly with a throbbing pain in her forehead. But as she opened her eyes and gazed around, she found herself in her bedroom. Sunlight streamed through large windows, creating rectangles of light and shadow that reached across her bed. Straight ahead was a curved sitting area. Plush floor pillows littered that space. A few odds and ends were stacked around the rounded walls. A chest of rare herbs, a leaning column of old spell books, and the newly emptied bowl of her beloved goldfish, Wilbur. Maybe magic had brought Wilbur to her, but he had been her only and best companion these 6 years, and now the house was silent, a dead, cold silent. No bubbles softly popping, no swishing of a tiny fishy tail. Lorena was alone. Or she had been. Now, in that sitting area, a stranger sprawled on the pillows, looking at Wilbur's bowl. Be careful with that, Lorena barked. The stranger glanced up. She was a young woman with bobbed jet black hair, a smooth, dusky complexion, and large black eyes. The stranger smiled and rose slowly, as though rising to approach a hurt wild animal. Who are you, and why are you in my house? Lorena demanded. The stranger stopped approaching. I didn't mean to intrude. I was heading to the store for fish food when I saw you open the door. And not only did you open the door for the first time in years, but, well, Lorena didn't want to wait. The happy feeling from earlier was gone. She was miserable again, miserable and alone. Oh, just say it. What did I do besides face planting? You smiled. You smiled, and there was a tear in your eye. When I saw your expression, I was so surprised. Though I think I was even more surprised when you fell over, asleep. I couldn't just leave you there. Lorena's eyes wandered back to Wilbur's old bowl, now safely placed back on the table. Then she looked back to the stranger. What is your name? Lissa St. James. Are you okay? Lissa suddenly prompted. I never seen anyone sleep like that. Lorena shrugged. I've been working for the past week straight. If I want someone to love me as much as Wilbur did, I must sacrifice a lot. Lissa shook her head. What are you talking about? My fish, Wilbur. He's the only thing in this awful world that's ever stuck by me. Who was ever happy to have me around. Lorena stared down at her hands. They squeezed the edge of the blanket. Lissa sat on the edge of the bed. That can't be true. That smile I saw was someone who loved themselves. As long as you love yourself, doesn't that count as one? It's because I spelled myself on accident, Lorena protested. Lissa shrugged. I think Wilbur would want you to care enough about yourself to grieve him and truly heal. Lorena raised an eyebrow. And how exactly would you know that? Lissa shrugged again. I have a fish, too. Finally, after several moments of silence, Lorena turned to the door. I would appreciate if you would stay and we could talk about fish. I can make us some tea. Lissa's eyes lit up. I can make the tea. I would love to. She hurried out and down the stairs. A small, peaceful smile tugged at Lorena's lips. Now I have a poem for you. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is a poem from a lady in Bulgaria. I've read several of her poems here and even some of her stories on this podcast. This one is entitled Silver in the Fleeting Glow, A Spiral of Sadness by Mariana Bosarova, and she published this in Catharsis Chronicles. Upon the silver lashes of the night, so many stars alone are perched above. The moment still and trembling in its flight caresses them, companions of love. It whispers tales of ancient, cherished past, of knights in armor, love so pure and bold, then adds a strange epilogue at last. Perhaps infinity began, last to unfold. And light began to pulse and softly gleam upon the silver lashes of the night. It vaguely feels like some forgotten dream, a woman longing with a dreamy sigh. The silver threads of stars in quiet fall descend upon a world in deepened sleep. In darkened blue skies they intertwine their call. In magic rites the night begins to sweep. Within the thickened tresses of the night they paint 100 worlds with silver glow, a canvas of a realm beyond our sight, where otherworldly visions grow. Yet the darkness closes its tired eyes. It yearns for peace, for slumber's gentle grace. A tear for this small window below, it cries, released with crystal sound to mark the place. And slowly down its silver lashes glide, a spiral of sadness slowly flows. Time trembles in the blink of just one eye, and thirsts for silver in the fleeting glow. So that's all I have for everyone this week. I appreciate you coming in and listening, and I hope you had something warm. Weather is getting a little chilly out there some places. Here in the United States, still dealing with remnants of that big hurricane that rolled through. But I hope you'll come back again next week for some more. Thank you, and I'll see you again next week. Sláinte. Guru Mahagat. Thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed the variety of stories and poems again this week. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, and reply, as this goes a long way towards reaching more listeners around the world. As a Shankay, I hope you will allow me to continue delighting you with a story or poem here under the crown of beatha. Maybe they will bring you a smile, take you away from your troubles for a time. As I say goodbye this week, I wish to leave you with this Irish blessing as you go about your day. May your path rise up to meet you, and the sun warm your bonnet as you walk down the lane to the pub. May your friends or relations bring you a pint after you retell these stories and poems I give you here. Slán go fóill. Goodbye for now.